develop oil in the Benghazi eastern sector of Libya. When the rebel army broke out, when the rebellion broke out, and Gaddafi, he was kept inside Tripoli. That meant that the oil fields, which are in the east, were under the control of the rebels. As soon as they got control of the oil fields, suddenly they're our friends. Suddenly they have to be protected. When Gaddafi was just slaughtering people, we didn't do anything about taking him out. I mean, that could have, jeopardized the contracts. But the minute that Gaddafi lost control of the oil fields of the east, he was gone. See, he made a mistake. He was concerned about military control. He should have been keeping his hand on the spigot. He'd be alive today. That's how it works. And that's a sad thing. Again, no one wants to say Gaddafi, we should defend Gaddafi or let him stay there, any of those things. But unfortunately, it's not about saving lives, because we could have saved lives by going
Sure, he's not
earlier.
being removed to bring peace. They brought al-Qaeda in. They're wrecking the country. They're putting in hardcore, hardline Islamic regimes. I'm told all day, give my rights up because the extremist Muslims are going to get me. Meanwhile, our governments are constantly giving them the keys to the city. What do you make of the latest developments in Iran? 3 aircraft carriers stacking up right off the coast. There's a big Washington Post full-page ad. Mr. President, say no to war of choice with Iran. And it's got Admiral Mullen in there, and it's got the former head of CENTCOM in there, and it's got Major General Paul Eaton. There's a whole bunch of them signed on there saying it's bad for Israel. You got the former head of Mossad saying don't do it, it'd be suicide. What's your view on Iran, and what's the inside sources you've got on where we are with a new war?
And unfortunately, I don't have enough good sources in Iran. Seymour Hersh was always saying that we're going to bomb, and he's been saying it for years from the inside. The question is... Well,
they've been bombing, actually, though. I mean, there's been a proxy war.
So the question is, who likes to keep the pot stirring? And I think that you have 3 guys running for re-election: Ahmadinejad in Iran, Obama in the United States, Netanyahu in Israel. And these guys need the pot boiling. They're all coming to get us. War. And suddenly, as you well know, war increases popularity for re-election. It's the oldest trick in the book. They're coming to get us, and we have to rally around the flag and rally around our president.
War is the health of the state.
Right. And so, and plus, keep in mind, every time Ahmadinejad says, booga, 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 we've got centrifuges, the price of oil kicks back up. And, I sometimes wonder if Ahmadinejad and Obama and trade phone calls, it's your turn this week to make the threat. You have to look at the oil market, which is what I do. I look at economics. I look at the oil market. And, you see these guys jerking it up and down. Someone's having a lot of fun with the oil market there. I can tell you that. Whether sometimes these things, the fun and games get out of hand, they actually start bombing, I can't prognosticate. It's way beyond my crystal ball's ability. But I do know that the endless boiling pot is a political bonanza for these guys and is a bonanza for the energy companies, the oil companies. They're grinning. Keep the war going, shut down those fields, make them burn, limit the supply, choke it off, keep oil above $100 a barrel.
That's all right. On your radar screen in the election, Ron Paul is finally coming out in Maine, other areas pointing out there was election fraud against him. We know that goes on. But, with Mitt Romney or Obama, they're both the same pedigree, a lot of the same backers, same policies. Both of them are basically Ken dolls that read off teleprompters. Who would somebody vote for with that choice of 2 evils? I don't see a lesser of 2 evils there. But, Obama, I got to say, who I thought he was a total puppet, he really is giving Bush a run for his money with the NDAA and just these federal rulings on free speech and everything. This is Twilight Zone.
Yeah, for those who went for the hope and change, and swallowed the whole line from the Pope of Hope, hey, go visit Guantanamo, that he was going to close. Remember that?
Yeah.
So, look, the one nice thing about being an investigative journalist, work at BBC, I'm not even allowed to make a choice on the election, so I don't. So I'm relieved of that tremendous burden and difficulty. I do know that there's going to be a lot of vote manipulation, that there's a lot in it, and it's not so much stealing votes left Democrat or Republican. I've done a lot of vote theft investigation, and it's about disempowering groups. If you look at the demographics, it's not so much black, white, but working class versus elite voters. Elite voters are pretty much left alone, even if they're Democrats or Republicans. And what we're seeing is things like the tricks. I was just, in fact, writing about it a minute ago, tricks like caging, where they send out letters to you at your registered address. If you're not there, they challenge your vote registration as fraudulent. Well, they were sending, Karl Rove's office was sending letters out to soldiers at their home addresses. Now, they're allowed to vote from Iraq or Afghanistan, but if the letter came back addressee not there, they lost their right to vote. Or they'd send in their ballots from overseas, and the votes don't get counted because they've been challenged at being they're not at their home address. This is the type of games that are being played. We're going to see an awful lot of that stuff this year. And again, it's going to be about a kind of class war by proxy, taking away your power to vote.
Well, I agree with you. I want to go to some phone calls here, but I wanted to bring up a separate issue with you. Are you noticing that either people are more awake now or they're getting more into a trance? I mean, a literal trance. I'm seeing people, and I've got a statistic here, it's 5 times more dangerous to text while driving than to drink while driving, but no one seems to care. I saw all sorts of crazy driving in a wreck today with people watching videos or texting. All I know is they had smartphones up to their faces while driving 70 miles an hour. And I think that that's a symptom of a public that's just totally become passive, like spectators, and now they think driving a car is spectator. They think, I mean, I'm really worried about humanity itself, Greg. That's kind of a wild card curveball.
No. This is actually something I've been thinking quite a bit about because I'm in media. To me, always the most dangerous drug addiction in America had been television. And, it takes over your head. You have a suspension of belief. It takes over your senses. Now, it's 24/7. People wake up with those iPhone, with the ear pods in their ears. They're getting the messages straight into their brain. I'm not talking about like some type of Dr. Moriarty in some cave with some dials putting some weird waves and signals in your head. I'm talking about just the damn info junk. The news goo, as my media critic friend Danny Schechter calls it. They're filling your head with junk, with garbage, and so that Iran, and that's why you get this repetitive thing, just like television commercials will be repeated over and over again with ear pods in our ears, cable constantly at us. You've got the information coming off the screen all the time, and so you hear Iran. You hear these chants and these mantras. They stop making any sense. You just know that Iran, danger, terrorists, fear. It's a more like endless commercials than it is information, and it's being fed nonstop. So it's subconscious. You're doing something else. You're driving or whatever. We've got like a hypnotized nation. It's like Prozakistan here.
Prozakistan. Did you coin that?
Yeah, I did, and yeah, but that's what it kind of is. I mean, it's like I do look around. It scares me, and maybe especially I must admit I have a 15-year-old daughter who's and I'm wondering, what's going on here? It's like zombies, and they're not actually into what they're listening to, which is the interesting thing. They're not really listening on the phone or listening to whatever broadcasts or music is going on. They're only half listening, but they're only half paying attention. There's a kind of Twilight Zone effect that's going on. And I'm worried that in that Twilight Zone effect, it's almost a hypnotic trance. You're subject to this endless subliminal messaging. And it's not like someone's sitting there with a grand plan. Well, let's just zonk everyone and whisper Iran Iran in their ears, or high oil prices are good for you, or radiation makes things taste better and will improve your sex life. It's that the repetition of these concepts in your half-stoned state.
And I agree with you, but the elites are starting to drink the Kool-Aid as well.
You know what? I've watched these guys. I've never seen one with earbuds in their ears. Ever.
Yeah, you're right. They're like in perfectly sharp suits with a bunch of people behind them walking around like cold-blooded reptiles or something. They know what they're doing. We'll be right back with Greg Palast. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Your phone call straight ahead. Everybody you talk to marvels that the public is in a mesmerized state. Well, how do we keep people from slipping into that state? How do we do that? Because the world is getting crazier and crazier, and the establishment knows they're dumbing down the media. They know they're distracting the public. What type of world is being built? It's hellish. Let's go to some phone calls in this segment, the next for our guest. Bergen in Wisconsin, you're on the air with Greg Palast. Go ahead.
Hi, it's Bergen, and it's an honor to speak with you again, Greg. I've seen you speak at the Fighting Bob La Follette Festival in Madison and at the Barrymore Theater, and I shamelessly plugged InfoWars on the community access radio WRT when you were on. And I was just wanted to speak to, or have you speak to a cross-paradigm appeal, if you could, because as you well know, Madison, Wisconsin, it's highly, the population is highly intelligent and highly educated, but there is that underlying, Alex calls them pencil necks or whatever, but there is a kind of a snarky, smarmy...
Chicken necks academic class filled with semi-informed via disinformation or misinformation population that has the potential to really come together with but they buy into a paradigm that because they take a certain orthodoxy that they're really smart and you're not, and they're following clown level narratives just like mainline Republicans are. How do you break through that, Greg Palast?
Information. That's what we're trying to do here. In other words, look, when you have something like Coney 2012, you're speaking directly to people's simplest, heartfelt emotions. And that's good in some ways, but then it leads you to dumb in other ways. In other words, they are really distracting you. And so, I think one thing to do with the sophisticates is to remind them that, if they are susceptible to being duped too, and remind them if they are really smart, they'll ask some questions. Like one thing I did when I was in Madison, Wisconsin, is I challenged the great god of the chicken necks, as you would call them, Alex, National Petroleum Radio and the Petroleum Broadcast System, which were absolutely running the oil industry's virtual infomercials after the Deepwater Horizon explosion on their so-called investigative program, Frontline, for example. And I have a section in Vulture's Picnic about this. In PBS ran a program saying, it's all BP's cultural problems. They don't have a culture of safety, like they didn't wear, white gloves at the opera. But this wouldn't happen with a wonderful company like Chevron, which wouldn't do these things. And they'd never mention that Chevron is the official #1 national corporate sponsor of PBS. They basically said, trust Chevron, not those BP guys. And then I went to the jungles of Ecuador and found that, Chevron is poisoning thousands of people. It's really ugly there. There's mass cancers from the junk that they're dropping. And by the way, there's more destruction of the wetlands by Chevron oil in the Gulf than from the BP Deepwater Horizon. But, the petroleum broadcast system isn't going to do that. So they have there's a certain elite agreement. There's a certain agreement that you'll get from the views of the Washington Post and the New York Times and PBS, and they have one viewpoint, and it's simply accepted that is the given truth, and everyone else is just a schmuck and a bozo and a redneck and a conspiracy nut.
But more and more, they're losing credibility, so the system's openly trying to censor the free exchange of ideas because we're cleaning their clocks. Back in 60 seconds with more of Greg Palast and Jon Rappoport.